So we are going to learn about what is PTSD. We're also going to talk a bit about how it affects children, and especially younger children and teens. And then a person living or who is suffering with PTSD. PTSD effects on children and their relationships. And that's a piece where you all may really come into play, right? You may have a child who's living in an environment that is experiencing PTSD somehow on their environment, and then how that child is interacting in the world might have a lot to do with those PTSD symptoms that might be around them by someone else. And then we'll talk about some suggestions on coping. One of the things I'm going to start with, though, is the power of emotions. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of video, and then we're going to kind of talk through what this is in regards to this lens of looking at supporting families with PTSD.
Assembly Day at East Rochester School is always a good day, but for fourth grader Adrienne Hebert and her little sister Emily in kindergarten, they have no idea just how special it's about to become. And here's why.
You want to fix?
In a nearby classroom, Gunnery Sergeant Donnie Hebert is just home from Afghanistan. He wasn't supposed to return until April, and he's about to see his daughters for the first time in months. Well, let's see, shall we? First, Adrienne sees a welcome home banner. Initially, there's confusion, but when she sees her dad for the first time in a long time, it all gives way to this.
We have a very, very special guest today.
Emily breaks from the pack first.
Hi, baby.
And then seconds later, the Hebert family is whole again.
How you doing, baby?
And Daddy, too.
Muffled sobs into the chest of this Marine say it all. Although after the reunion, the girls gave it their best shot. For Mom Jamie, it was a tough secret to keep. But with this kind of reaction...
So I'm just going to pause it there just for 1 second, because our focus is also on military families. And so as you can see, powerful emotions, right? And kids do a really good job. What was happening before she recognized the banner? She appeared to just be going along with the flow, right? She was in class. She was sitting down like she was supposed to be doing. She was crisscross applesauce. She wasn't making a scene or, not doing. Her sister was also doing the right thing, who's younger. So you wouldn't have known that all of that was under the surface. Most of us don't see that very much. But then the emotion, right? That face and the welling up. And so all of that lives there. And those of you who work with kids, you know that. It is all there under the surface. And lots of kids they're resilient. They can move on and they can handle things when big things are going on in their lives. And in military families, when one is deployed or separated from their parent, that is a big thing in a child's life, at no matter what age, right? So there was another clip in a different version of this PowerPoint that showed an older kid who was 18, senior in high school, was playing his last football game and didn't realize his father was going to be able to come home for 2 weeks of R&R. And so he was out on the field when his son, who was the captain of the team, flipped the coin. And it's these, have you guys ever watched those military homecoming videos, right? If you need a good cry, watch those. And so that's what that was. And the thing is that Dad had deployed, that video has a couple of other scenarios with it, but Dad had deployed several times throughout his school career and had missed many important moments for him. And so this boy not only got his dad, but he was a senior captain last football game, and he was being given a scholarship to a school as well. So it was a really, really big moment. And this boy, it took him a very long time, so the caption says, to really kind of collect himself and get ready to come back. So that's the power of the emotions that are happening for our kids who are dealing with military deployments. Now, if we were to fast forward, maybe that dad or someone in their family is now home, but they might have PTSD. So let's talk about what that is. So post-traumatic stress disorder. It's the DSM-5 diagnosis. There is a whole constellation of symptoms that actually gives you that diagnosis. But one of the things that I think occurs for a lot of our military folks or anyone who's gone through something that's been scary, sudden, traumatic, is that our natural way of coping is some of these symptoms. And some of the symptoms may last longer, and you may not actually get a PTSD diagnosis. You may not see someone who would give you that diagnosis, because families aren't diagnosing themselves. They're just kind of trying to live and move forward. So for the sake of our conversation, we're going to talk about what the diagnosis is. And I love this slide because it's blurry. And so the blurriness to me really spoke out in regards to the fact that PTSD can be all those words that are up there on that slide, but they also can be a little skewed. Some of them can be more intense. Some of them could not even be present exactly. Some of them might be present sometimes or not others. Or the other part is not everyone will see them. You know, how often does that happen for you all who might be working with clients who may have post-traumatic stress disorder? Is that sometimes it may be difficult to diagnose that exactly because we're not seeing all the symptoms. Especially, you know, our war in the Middle East has been going on, this war's been going on for, are we at 15 years now? And so some of our folks who've experienced things war-related, combat-related, that may give them the PTSD diagnosis, they may have been dealing with those symptoms for a very long time. And we're resilient people. And so humans are able to really mask a lot of things. And so some of these symptoms may not come up. But some that you might find affecting a family, you know, think about nightmares. Very common symptom for post-traumatic stress disorder. But if you're the one having the nightmare, let's say you're the mom or the dad, and you've got 3 little kids at home, or 3 kids of any age, and you're awake half the night because you got woken up because of your nightmare, how might that affect like the family? Someone tell me, what might sleep issues due to nightmares? And by the way, insomnia is the #1 symptom that we hear from people even before we've diagnosed them with PTSD. So insomnia is a big issue. There's a new research study out that says that insomnia may be a specific piece of the death by suicide rate. And so you can imagine that if you're not sleeping, brain may not be engaging all the way. And so the numbers of military members who are not sleeping well is actually up in the 80%. The DoD for the Army has actually started capturing more data about insomnia issues. So over the next couple of years, we'll have more information coming out about how serious insomnia is. But let's talk about it in the family. So someone tell me, what might you see if mom or dad are not sleeping most nights? They're only getting 2 or 3 hours because they're being woken up from a nightmare, which means they're waking up feeling on edge, guarded, fearful, maybe even terrorized. So what might be going on then for the family? What might we see as symptoms? Someone tell me. Disruption of the whole family setting, right? Yeah, so like breakfast might be late because maybe mom or dad actually fell back asleep on the couch, right? And so you may see then kids late to school, okay? There was a hand back there somewhere. So she said you'd see irritability. So irritability in the person who's not sleeping, right? But that may translate across the whole family, right? So has anyone ever done that in their family? I did it this morning, right? So you're irritable, now the trickle down, this person's irritable and the next person's irritable, right? So right, irritability, which really can be a flashpoint, a trigger point for lots of other things that may come up, even violence, right? Even reacting quickly or harshly. Poor judgment, exactly. So how might that affect kids we might be working with, right? So if judgment is off because of lack of sleep, it could put someone in a safety issue. There could be some danger. Maybe it has to do with diet, right? I know for me, when I am tired and irritable and hungry, who makes good choices? I don't. I go for the chocolate cake and the ice cream and the M&Ms in the back of the room, which is an entire tub of M&Ms. So if you were doing that every day, because this is not just I just didn't sleep last night for whatever reason. This is I didn't sleep every single night, maybe even for years, because of something that I keep waking up from, a nightmare, right? Remember, this is a nightmare. This is not just I'm not able to get to sleep or some of the other insomnia symptoms. This really is from nightmares. So exactly, so yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, from what my clients tell me a lot, it increases drug and alcohol consumption because it's hard to deal with. You know, all those memories come flooding back, and you know,
right.
That's one of their coping skills, even though it's not a good one.
Right. So
deal with it, and then that affects the whole family.
Excellent, thank you. So she just said that it increases drug and alcohol use, which makes sense, right? So if I wake up in the middle of the night and now I'm on edge, I'm fearful, I'm having all of these memories and thoughts and feelings I don't like having, well, drugs or alcohol definitely would take that edge off. And if you get in that routine, then now maybe you're drinking more in the middle of the night, or maybe you're drinking to go to sleep so that you don't have the nightmare. It is definitely a slope into substance use. And I'm sure there's some statistics out there about that, but I don't know that specifically. But that is definitely a place. It's also a really great place for you all who might be doing assessments, either with kids or with the adults in the family, is to just simply ask, what's it like at nighttime? What's it like for bedtime for you? What's it like to sleep? Not just the how many hours are you getting asleep each night, because how many people answer that question truthfully? Nope. So my mom just started wearing a little Fitbit thing, and I knew she wasn't sleeping because I would hear her in the middle of the night. And she lives with me, by the way. So I made her wear a little Fitbit thing. She's literally sleeping like 3 hours a night, like good solid sleep. And I was like, I told you so. Because she lies. She lies to the doctor. She lies to her cardiologist because she really thinks that she's sleeping more, just not feeling good. So we take on, also those of us with insomnia or sleeping problems, we take on this blame idea, like it's somehow my fault, right? So how might that affect the whole family? You know, I'm not sleeping, I'm irritable, this is happening because something is my fault, right? So that also kind of lends you down another way of coping with things if we believe things are our fault, which is another layer of post-traumatic stress disorder, which really impacts the family and which you can assess for. So you can talk to them, but well, how do you feel about not sleeping? And if you hear the blame, the fault, the guilt, I would encourage you to continue to kind of talk through that and see if that's connected to maybe a constellation of PTSD symptoms, or maybe there's something else going on there. But I really find talking to someone about their sleep beyond just the how many hours do you get really helps to figure out kind of maybe a picture of what's happening in the family, including talking to the children. So, you know, finding out, you know, where does caregiver sleep? Where do mom and dad sleep? You know, do you ever, and if they say, well, sometimes they sleep on the couch. Well, how often do you think you find mom or dad on the couch in the, you know, in the morning when you get up? You know, and then you can kind of hear maybe some of the story that's happening inside that household. Not in regards to really looking at like problems or abuse, but to really try and understand where there may be some concerns. Oh no. So some other symptoms for post-traumatic stress disorder, flashbacks, those, you know, triggers. And that's a piece too that I find can be, you might see in your children that you're working with, is that they may notice, they're like, oh yeah, daddy doesn't go to the grocery store. Oh, tell me about that, right? Well, then if daddy's the only one home because mom is, you know, deployed, or mom is someplace else, maybe mom's not in the home, you know, how do you get groceries? What's going on with that? It's wonderful now that you can buy them off Amazon and go pick them up at Walmart by just driving through. But if you can't go into a busy place, see how that might impact children, you know, also like their activities, you know, if it's sporting events. So soccer games can be really difficult. So anyone here got little children that are in soccer or had kids in soccer? So if you've got PTSD, mom or dad has an issue maybe with large crowds, or another symptom is really dealing with that unexpected, the unknown of what's going on can be really difficult. So taking your child to soccer practice or soccer games, it's in that big, huge field. They've broken up the fields into little tiny places. It looks different every time because they set the cones in different places, or you have to park in a different spot. I know, I just went. Maybe I have some PTSD about the soccer practice at Alamo Field. I don't know if anyone goes there, but it's crazy. It's very difficult to go to those things. I had a client that I was working with who was telling me that he was so upset because he couldn't come to soccer, couldn't go to soccer anymore because mom now deployed and dad is home, but dad couldn't handle all of the busyness that was happening. And so when I finally talked to dad to find out what's going on with that, because part of this kid's treatment plan was to be in organized sports, dad was telling me that he can't handle it. He doesn't know where he's supposed to park. There's too many people. He can't let his son go and he stay on the edge because he's too far away. And this kid was 5 or 6. So you, as a parent, probably want to be closer to him. But this person also did have diagnosed PTSD with a lot of needs to protect and provide safety and really control his environment. And so it was a really difficult place, and it was really difficult for the child. He was in a very small school. Everybody in his class was playing soccer. And what we started seeing was disruption in class. He was mad at his classmates. He was throwing and hitting things in class. And that's what we came down to, was the fact that dad couldn't take him to soccer.
I think in a way that PTSD is communicable. I mean, the symptoms that the person who has it suffers from also affect people who also react to it. So, I know with kids, I'm a CPS worker, and the children have PTSD, often because they've been in stressful environments where there was some kind of traumatic stress going on. And so they develop it along with their parents.
Yeah, so toxic stress, traumatic stress, unexpected, sudden things. So if that's happened in your family, right, your family system doesn't even need to be from combat or from being deployed. It happens in our families all of the time. What's happening on the East Coast right now, right? It's a pretty big storm. It's a little concerning. If anyone has family and friends there, you're probably concerned of what's really happening with the water and the level and all that stuff. So my son is 4.5. And my mom lives with me and she loves to watch the news. I try not to watch it when he's around. But this morning he asked me, Mommy, how bad's the hurricane? So he has picked up enough of just sitting and talking with Mom or some of the conversations we've been having that this hurricane is bad. And so you're right, we can experience things in our lives that are traumatic. And our natural responses are some of these symptoms. That's how our body and brain moves us through things that are difficult to deal with. It's when they get stuck that we then look at the diagnosis part of it. But you're right, if there's already some of these symptoms or some of these experiences across families, and we know we work with some families that have historical, generational, traumatic, toxic stress going on. And that is definitely very problematic. I see a hand.
Well, I think the one thing that we maybe don't think about enough in terms of the avoidance of situations is the how much of a threat unpredictability is.
Yeah, so I'm just going to repeat that just 1 second.
Yeah, well,
So
and it becomes back to the kid as well.
yeah, so she's talking about avoidance and unpredictability and how those situations are really a threat. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And then even in the classroom, unpredictability, having us up.
Exactly.
Sets the
Having
kid
us
in a
up.
box, sends the kid into orbit, and what is it? It's just a sub. Or we can't go outside for recess here.
Right.
Or it's rain, or
Right.
And, I think we don't give kids enough credit for what they actually do pick up. You were asking about the sleep patterns earlier, and, they may not be sleeping as well because they sense that their parents aren't sleeping.
They might have some sleep issues as well.
Kids are sleeping well, so they don't feel as safe and secure.
Also, another thing I've come across is kids not being able to go to that parent in the middle of the night. The kid has a nightmare, or the kid is afraid, and their normal reaction is to run to their parent, but if their parent has PTSD, that can go very badly. So, they have that distance where they know, I can't do that.
Right. So she's talking about kids' natural reactions and needing something maybe quickly or intensely from their parents, and a parent or a caregiver with post-traumatic stress disorder may not be able to react to that well. Exactly. And they've probably learned over time where they need to stop. Did I say that well? Yeah, we're going to actually talk a little bit more about that.